everyone, I'm Melissa McAllister, and you're listening to The Melissa Made Show. Now, for decades, I've dedicated myself to helping women break the cycle of dieting, navigate through all the fads, and change their lives through my nutrition coaching. Now, each week, I'm going to talk about everything from deep nutrition, mindset, self-care, the ideal workout routine, tips on how and why to implement intermittent fasting in your life, my favorite recipes that are not only crowd pleasers, but they're actually healthy for you, and so much more. Now, with small and consistent changes, you can defy aging while living a happier, healthier, and more heart-filled life. I'm so excited to show you it's possible with the right strategies that are so simple to adopt. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Melissa Made Show. And before I give my guest a well-deserved introduction, I want to let you guys know that I'm very, very excited to talk to her because we had to cancel on each other a couple of times. And so the fact that we are together getting this podcast done is a miracle in and of itself. But I was just sharing with her that I have gotten lately just inundation of people messaging me, really wanting help with, being diagnosed with autoimmune disorders and maybe some diseases, just not feeling well. I mean, beyond just, wanting to lose weight. And it's been overwhelming. And I think I honestly believe it's because now that we're out of the pandemic, or during the pandemic, it was just, survive. And now we're wanting to thrive again. And so people are like, I want to feel really good again. And I don't think I could have a better guest for this. So we're going to do a lot of deep diving today. I'm very excited. But let me give her introduction first. I want you to meet functional nutritionist and certified autoimmune coach, Risa Groux. Very unusual, very beautiful. She was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease that caused chronic inflammation and a host of other health issues, and she became determined to find the root cause. Thanks to testing and subsequent dietary and supplement treatments, she was able to reverse those symptoms naturally. I love that. She quickly realized that she could help others do the same. Now, her new book that came out this year is Food Frame, Diet is a Four-Letter Word, which has gotten great reviews from doctors like Stephen Gundry and Josh Axe. And I do want to say, when I went to go purchase the book on Amazon, there was only a couple left. So I'm just putting that out there. I'm sure there's other places she will let you know where you can get the book, but as far as Amazon, it's a hot item. So it's a comprehensive guide to using functional nutrition guidelines to help readers identify the root causes of various health issues and then eat according to the health status and become to the healing process. She's a frequent guest on radio and television and has been recently featured on Good Day LA, Hallmark's Home and Family, and recently on Good Morning America. Thank you so much, Risa, for being on this podcast. Like I said, I'm very, very excited to have the opportunity to pick your brain.
Thank you, Melissa. That's so sweet. I'm really glad to be here.
Good. I'm glad. So I actually want to really fast. I want to open this, believe it or not, by just a message I got this morning on my social media. These are the kind of I think that is just a great way for us to start talking. It's a follower of mine. And right now I'm doing actually a little bit of an extended fast. And so I think that's, culminating all of these questions. But I had someone ask if I wanted to do a cleanse of sugar and processed food, how would I do that? I feel weighed down and drained. And, sometimes I think we feel, when you're in the nutrition space, honestly, full disclosure, my first inclination was, well, that's easy, just don't eat processed foods and eat whole foods. But it's really not that easy for people to go from maybe, a lifestyle that they had where it has caused them to not feel their best to going into a lifestyle where they do. So can we start with that? Like if somebody's listening to this podcast and they're like, okay, Melissa sounds pretty enamored by this lady, which I am. Where would you start? I mean, just at the very basic level of not feeling well, what would you tell people to do in order to just start getting on that healing path?
Yeah, so it's a great question. And I'm going to start with what I tell people that I work with in my office. And I usually say for the first time I work with you, I want you to imagine, Melissa, that your body is just like a sneaker factory. You've got all the equipment to make a sneaker. So I know if I give you leather, rubber, or canvas, we're going to get a sneaker at the end, right? It may change in shape or size or color, but it's going to be a sneaker. And if I say to you, let's put some cell phone parts in your sneaker factory, what would you say?
Weird.
Right. Weird is good. I love that response because we wouldn't want to do that. Because if we did put cell phone parts in the sneaker factory, my guess is all that equipment would start to break. Yeah. It's not made for cell phone parts. We'd have to take those cell phone parts and put it in a cell phone factory. And I use that silly little example because whoever created us created, things crawling on the ground and things sprouting from the earth that we could eat. And sustain ourselves and procreate, those are our two main goals as living organisms. So what we're doing in the modern world, this was before chemicals were involved, right? Because the Industrial Revolution came and we started eating chemicals, lots of them. And to date, this is a sad new number, but the FDA has approved 86,000 chemicals for us to use. Most of them aren't even tested, I'm sorry to say. And we're about 2,000 approved every year, regardless of who's in the White House, well over 3,000 of which we can eat. So brand new information just came in recently that Europe, that the EU just banned 1,300 chemicals for their cosmetics, and the US banned 11. So we are very, very inflamed from all these chemicals. So what I would say to that person is stop putting cell phone parts in your machinery. Eat real food. Put leather, rubber, and canvas that you were designed to eat. We were designed to eat animal protein, vegetables, good fats. That's what sustains us. I just got off a Zoom call with a client that I'm working with who I just started. He said, I don't know what's wrong, but I'm not that hungry anymore. And I said, because you put real food into your body. When you put shampoo into your gas tank, I've never tried it. I don't know if it would register as full or not, but I can pretty much tell you it would probably break the car. So we shouldn't be putting in, we should be conscious of what food we're putting in. Is it going to help me or is it going to hinder me? And sugar, even though it can be from natural sources, is not good for us. Processed sugar is one of the worst poisons we can have. And when we eat sugar of all kinds, not necessarily fructose from fruit, even though it's still going to spike your blood sugar levels, but that sugar is going to eat at your white blood cells. So when I do your blood test, which I do a very extensive blood test in, I'm looking at your white blood cells. Are you in the state of fight or are you depleted because you've been fighting so much? I don't know about you, but I want my full battalion with me at all times because there's so many things coming at me that I don't want to deplete my immune system. So sugar is not good for that. I could go on and on about sugar being inflammatory. It feeds cancer cells. I mean, on and on and on and on. It is what I call a food for sport. And we should be eating more food for survival. So not to say you can't ever eat food for sport, but most people walk into my office sustaining themselves on food for sport and eating a little for survival. So we switch that.
Yeah, I love that you say that because just yesterday I was thinking to myself, as you're driving and you see the fast food places and you see the ice cream stores and stuff like that. And I know that people will, go to the hamburger joint and have hamburger and French fries for lunch. And in my mind, that just never shuts off. I was just like, I wish I could help people understand that is not lunch, that's a treat. And you are more than welcome to have treats, but you've also got to feed yourself, whatever you believe, one meal, 5 or 6 meals, but you've got to have meals in the day that are nutritious. And you can't count the foods that are void of nutrition as a meal or as something that's actually feeding your body. So I love that you said that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you work with clients that have, these autoimmune disorders and you start helping them with their diet, because obviously diet helped you and now you help other people, are there, according to the different autoimmune disorders, does the diet vary any? And if it does, can you give some examples of what someone would eat for what they have kind of thing?
Yes. So I have been doing this for so many years. And, when I first started my practice a million years ago, I would be like, put everybody on the same diet type, right? Eat
Yes.
this way. And when I use the word diet, I'm not talking about restriction and deprivation. I'm talking about a food program, an eating lifestyle. So, but I realized once I started getting their blood test and stool test in, oh, that person has SIBO, small intestinal bacteria overgrowth. They shouldn't be eating those foods, right? Garlic and onions are going to really set them off, cruciferous vegetables. So I started to formulate my method called Food Frame. And I realized that everybody should be eating according to their health status. So if you have autoimmunity, that means that your Th17, your Treg cell, a certain type of Treg cell has been activated and you are in a state of inflammation, right? Perhaps we've had leaky gut. And so all that these proteins are going through, there could be stress, toxins, particles, anything's going through the intestinal lining, and it's causing the body to respond with making antibodies. So you do this for a while, and then it finally finds a place to land. And it could be a tissue, an organ, or a gland. And so in my case, it landed on my thyroid, and I have Hashimoto's, or I'm just about to reverse that. I've taken it from my TPO was at 1,458 when I started, and now I'm about 10 points away. The next time I do my labs, I'll probably be void of Hashimoto's. But
Amazing.
yeah, so what that tells me is that you're in a state of inflammation. So if it's fibromyalgia, it's hitting your muscles. If it's rheumatoid arthritis, it's hitting your joints, so on and so forth. We just find a different gland, tissue, or organ to which we land on. So for that person, we've got a massive fire in the basement, massive, right? And so the doctor may give you a little squirt gun and say, okay, let's see if we can just manage this autoimmune disease, right? Not even get it out. I'm going to take a fire hose and get, that fire out, that flame out, because you're in a state of inflammation. So what I do in my office and everyone I work with is I look at foundational issues, because these are the two foundational issues that optimize or destroy health. And there's systemic inflammation, because we know that's the driver of disease. And the other one is gut health. And without those two, you're not going to thrive. And without those two, you're going to really hinder the body and damage your health. So we have to absolutely get the inflammation out. So for anybody with autoimmunity, I'm going to recommend absolutely my detox for the first 2 weeks to detoxify the liver so that it's working optimally. And then it takes out the garbage, it takes out those toxins that are living in the fat cells and fat tissues. We're going to detox that toxic load, right? We're going to minimize that as best we possibly can. And then, and I know people love it because they lose weight, but it's not a weight loss program. I feel that weight loss is a side effect of wellness. And then we move on to continued eating plan of an anti-inflammatory diet. So I would recommend the autoimmune protocol. That's an elimination diet. That's 30 to 90 days. And it's really taking out all legumes, all grains, all dairy, all sugar, alcohol, coffee, nuts, seeds. It's pretty restrictive. So you're eating animal protein, unlimited vegetables, good fat, sweet potatoes, yams. Or I would recommend low lectin, right? So that's another driver of disease, or foods that are high in lectins. On autoimmune, take out nightshades. So I would recommend one of those for a short period of time. And then I would probably recommend, depending on what their health status was, that they continue on the paleo program.
Okay. And I, for somebody that probably just heard that long list, there was probably a moment of gasp, but I always have to remind people that time is going to fly anyway. That short period of time is going to pass no matter what. And as they always say, choose your heart. It might be hard to get through that, to see there are so many people that do have sensitivities with food that don't know it. And until you do without it, will you ever know? And you'll think to yourself, I'm eating so healthy, but there's things that are not serving you as an individual. And so that's, I think it's such an important thing for people to do. I'm very big on seeing if people can live without their gluten and live without their dairy for a certain amount of time, to see if they're one of the people, because it's a rising number that have gluten sensitivity, or could have allergies to it, or dairy as well. And you just don't know until you completely are void of it for a while. And so I love that you do that.
And I test people for their antibodies to gliadin, the protein in gluten. So I know. I'm not really good at guessing. I mean, I can, but I'd rather know. I'd rather have the data in front of me. So, but gluten is one of those inflammatory foods, and it helps open up those tight junctions to create leaky gut. We only have one layer of epithelial cells in our intestinal lining. So it's really critical that you're kind to it and that we keep our integrity of it so we don't have leaky gut.
I love that. And I want you to go into a little bit more detail if you wouldn't mind. I always share my story that, I'm a victim of Agent Orange. My father served in Vietnam and was exposed to Agent Orange, and it gave me birth defects because the Agent Orange was sitting in his fat cells and it just sat there dormant. My sister was born. She was perfectly fine. I always have to joke though that she's mental, but she's not. She's perfectly fine. But I came out with, major birth defects in my feet. And it's because he went on a diet between my sister and I to lose weight to get into the helicopter training in the Army. And it got into his bloodstream. And that's when the problems happened. But you hear all the time people say, this has to rub you wrong. We don't need to detoxify. That's why we have a liver, is because our liver is constantly detoxifying us. So there's nothing that we need to do because we have a liver. Can you share your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So there's so much to respond here, but imagine if you never cleaned out your garage and somebody just kept bringing boxes and boxes and boxes, and you couldn't park your car in the garage eventually. I mean, you have to clean it out. You have to clean out your closet. You have to clean your vents. I mean, we do have an automatic system, but there's a marker on the blood work that I check for everybody called homocysteine. And when homocysteine is elevated, which oftentimes it is, I would say 9 times out of 10 it is, then we are not able to detoxify our own heavy metals and our own toxins. And at the rate of which we consume them, I mean, the average American female comes in contact with over 200 toxins just before she's left the bathroom each morning. And if you read your shampoo label, your conditioner, your deodorant is a huge one, your nail polish, your makeup, your toothpaste, I mean, it goes on and on and on. So think about all the chemicals, let alone the candles, what we're breathing in, and the paints and the furniture and the fire retardant in our clothes. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And then we lather up sunscreen, and then we sit down to eat something, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just, we're bombarded with chemicals. And so there's a gene mutation that I test everybody for called MTHFR. It's very common. I have it, both my kids have it, and it's 100% genetic. 90% of the population has it. So I test everybody for it. And when you have MTHFR, it basically means that you're not methylizing or processing either your B12 and or your folate. And so when you have MTHFR, we tend to see an elevated homocysteine. And that prevents you from detoxifying your own effectively on your own. So there is a little bit of that. And if you have any extra weight on your body, well, yeah, you've got toxins in those fat cells. It's just, that's where they are. So we all need to clean, even though you might not clean your garage, but and I mean, you might be able to park your car in there. You still need to purge. It's just a natural process. And most cultures have some kind of a detoxifying, cleansing ritual. It's really interesting when you look at different cultures that we've been doing this since the beginning of time. So unfortunately, we are so toxic that we do have to do it. We have to assist our liver and we have to assist our body.
Yeah, I think that's very sound advice. And I 100% agree with you. Talking about disease and the onset of autoimmune disorders that come with time, we've talked about. You've mentioned some of the food for elimination diets, and definitely sugar is a big one. I'm studying a lot right now on cancer, and so I agree with you, the effects that sugar has on the body and keeping it from being well. And then you're also talking about kind of all the toxins that are around. So that's a lot of things that we have thrown at us to cause these diseases and these autoimmune disorders. Is there anything else that may not be so, I say obvious, sometimes it's not obvious to people, but usually obvious, that women particularly are doing that are causing them to exacerbate these diseases or these disorders that they can kind of look out for? Anything in your practice that you've seen that's been more common, I guess, than you think, or things that you've discovered in your years of helping other women that you're like, wow, okay, this is something that I need to look at more often because it's prominent? Are you ready to learn the secret behind how I continue to be so healthy? Well, it all comes down to science. If you've been listening to my show for a while now, you may have heard me mention something called the MAID diet. Yes, that's right, because I'm so passionate about how learning about the effects that nutrition has on the human body, I always seek to learn as much as I can and apply that knowledge. One of my best learning tools has been self-experimentation. And now in my late 40s, I have to say, I've done a pretty good job. It's hard to find trustworthy, even accurate information in this country between the influence of big corporations with monetary agendas, the nutrition labels designed to deceive, and downright misleading information that you were taught in school. Navigating food and nutrition with your optimum health in mind can be quite challenging. Take the food pyramid, for example. In an ideal world, I'm sure we would all love to eat pasta and baguettes for every meal, but that's simply not what's best for our bodies, our health, and our longevity. Now, I spent years developing the MAID diet in a way that I wish someone had taught me, and I break it all down in my MAID diet course. People are always asking me what I eat, so we start there. What I eat in a day and which foods are the most beneficial. So think something in between the Mediterranean and the paleo diet. It's a lifestyle plan that incorporates moderate protein, adequate fat, decreased carbs, and an introduction to intermittent fasting. But please, I want you to keep in mind, just because I say decrease carbs, I don't mean decrease carbs in what your body needs. I just mean decrease carbs in what the standard American diet has become. You still get plenty of quality carbohydrates, just not in the mass amounts we have been eating to get us into such an unhealthy state. And of course, we're going to talk about what foods to avoid because that's just as important. We even talk about how to eat healthy on the go because let's face it, we're busy and that's just life. And then there's intermittent fasting. I share all of my favorite tips and tricks, and a lot of science are along the way. I could not say enough good things about intermittent fasting, and I'm honestly so surprised more people are doing it. You'll also learn how I've learned to balance my hormones and feel my best because so many women struggle with this. And lastly, we cover the mindset behind making a change because we all know that your mindset is the key to your success in anything that you do. So if you are struggling with diet in terms of feeling your best or you are ready to take your health to the next level, I strongly recommend you check out this course. Now, the course is structured in 5 modules, 16 lessons, and a whole lot of research to back everything up. So I want you to visit my website, themaiddiet.com or melissamaid.com, and you will see a tab for the course. Click on that to get access today and learn why you should be eating this way too.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of touched on gluten. That would definitely be high on that list. Dairy would also be very high on that list. And people usually walk in my office and say, I really don't eat that much dairy. And then we start talking about what they eat, and they're eating it every meal. They just don't consciously notice it. But whether it's yogurt, yes, even Greek yogurt, I mean, there's just a lot. Dairy can be very damaging. It's very inflammatory. They have a lot of growth hormones and antibiotics in that dairy. And it's got casein, which is a protein in most dairies that is very hard to digest. 3/4 of the population is dairy lactose intolerant. That's the sugar in dairy. So it's not really a health food. And I know people do it for either the calcium or they do it for the probiotic, good gut bacteria. But in our country, we don't like lawsuits, so we heat all those yogurts up so that we don't get any kind of bad bacteria like salmonella and things like that. During that process, we heat out the good bacteria and enzymes. So it's not really a health food. It's really, you're just ending up with sugar and inflammation. But another thing that I would say to people that they are not aware of is oils. And oils can be highly inflammatory. So olive oil is a great oil. It's one of the best heart healthy oils, really good for the system, but it doesn't have a high smoke point. So I don't cook at high heat with olive oil, and that a lot of people do. So I would say replace that with avocado oil or coconut oil. And then when you go to restaurants, most restaurants, I ask a lot when I go, what oils do they use? And I really never find a restaurant, no matter how expensive it is, even some of the 5-star spas I've been to, those people will do a blend. I always say, oh, that's great, the blend. And, there's always canola oil and vegetable oil or corn seed oil or soybean oil even, with a little bit of olive oil. And that blend, even though the way they say it so nicely, is not good for you. Oils can be, those are very highly processed oils. They have a lot of rancidity, and they cause a ton of inflammation. So it's always best to eat at home, but if you have to eat out, that's fine. We travel, we're all going to die of something, but just be very cognizant that you are eating inflammatory oils when you go out, and counterbalance that with some good oils at home and with some anti-inflammatory supplements. I take my Turmeric Max all the time, my Omega Max. Those are your really good anti-inflammatories. My Resveratrol are very, very anti-inflammatory. So
I love that. And I think everybody should, or if they haven't, at least know somebody that's been in the food service industry. And I used to work at Outback Steakhouse for a very short amount of time. And I actually appreciated when somebody was, as long as they weren't difficult, but really, can you make the vegetables? Can you take the butter out of the vegetables before you steam them? For 2 reasons. Number one, I mean, they're there for a great experience. And number 2, let's just be honest, if I served them well, my tip was better. So if they came in and sat down and just ordered off the menu and there was nothing for me to do, it's going to be an okay tip. But if I actually do well for them, the tip is usually higher. And so I'm saying that because if you go into a restaurant and you're so nervous about asking them what kind of oil they use, or if they can go light on the oil. Sometimes we go to a stir fry place and I know they can't cook it without oil, and I know it's not good oil, but I can ask them, can you go light on the oil when you cook it, please? And they're so accommodating. Don't ever second guess doing that, because those little tiny, things that you ask people to do are going to make a big difference, especially if you do eat out a lot.
Absolutely. I love that you said that, coming from that perspective. Because I'm always super, super nice about it. Because I say, oh, I'm a little difficult. I'm so sorry, but can we? And I was out last night and I said, what kind of dressing is this dressing gluten-free? And if not, just olive oil and vinegar is fine. And I realize that I'm a little bit of a tough customer that way, but I need to accommodate myself, because I don't want to go home feeling not good and drive my inflammation up when I'm trying so hard to bring it down.
Yeah, absolutely. And you kind of touched on like resveratrol really quick. I would love for you to share with the audience, because I know you had mentioned too that, you use supplementation to heal yourself. What kind of supplements you recommend to your patients to help them heal themselves with an autoimmune disorder, or even just trying to get healthier?
Right. So everybody pretty much I work with is going to have a vitamin D if they need it, which most people do. Vitamin D is an amazing, it's actually a hormone, not a vitamin, but we have a D receptor site in every cell in the body. So it's anti-aging, anti-cancer, cannot make bone without it. Important for thyroid, gut, heart health, everything. I could go on. B vitamin, my B Ultra is in methylcobalamin form. So that is perfect for anybody with MTHFR. I check people to see which allele they have, but it doesn't matter. You just need it in methylcobalamin form. And so everybody's on a B and a D here. And then everything else is according to their health status. So if they have inflammation issues, they're going to get, if they're autoimmune and they're inflamed, they get my Fab 5. That's my vitamin D. Turmeric Max, which is extraordinarily helpful and it moves the needle big time. Resveratrol, also very anti-inflammatory. Has quercetin in it, so it gets into the cells, and it's really good anti-aging as well, but it's really anti-inflammatory. Omega Max, again, that's your your fatty acids, from fish and essential fatty acids, and that's really good not only just for cholesterol and eye health, but it's also really, really good for heart health and autoimmunity. And glutathione. Glutathione is our master antioxidant. So it helps us protect ourselves against any oxidative stress, meaning anything that wants to come into the body and create disease. It's like the guard gate. So I do a lot of glutathione. And then I have a supplement called AI Balance for autoimmune. And that helps modulate the Th17 and all the inflammation generally. It's just like the conductor for it all. So that's the essential 6 basically. And I have the Fab 5. So, and then depending on what you've got going, I've got a lot of different supplements, but I usually recommend collagen as a protein source. I do a lot of collagen. I have at least one collagen serving a day. It's really great for hair, skin and nails, but it's incredibly good for gut, like incredibly good. I call it route for leaky gut because it has the amino acids that just fill in those little cracks, those little holes, those tight junctions. And then it's really good for joint pain. So anybody with arthritis or joint pain, they are for sure getting some collagen. My detox is collagen based, so it's really, really good. And then there's just other things that, you know, I'm all about now, postbiotics that feed the colon. That's the end of the intestinal line. And those are really, really important. There's short chain fatty acids, butyric acid, and that they're showing so much science that creates, helps to create the diversity of the microbiome, and it helps with AMPK, a protein we make that helps with sugar regulation. And then I just came out with a new product called Gut Sweep that I am just loving this. So this is for anybody who thinks they have leaky gut or who has leaky gut, who has IBS, any bowel issues, anybody can take it, and it's wonderful. And it binds and removes antigens. So I do a lot of that. Yeah. And then my Gut Reboot, which is a healer for the gut. So I do those two in tandem, and they're just great.
I love that. So tell me, which I assume it's maybe case per case, general probiotic. I heard the postbiotic, the general probiotic, like magnesium and zinc. Is that something that's pretty often prescribed by you?
Yeah, I mean, I test people's to see what their deficiencies are, but magnesium is often blocked by medication. So if you're on a lot of medication, you're generally getting your D, your B, and your magnesium blocked. Coffee and alcohol also block magnesium and B vitamins. So depending on how heavy of a drinker you are of both of those, I might give you some magnesium. If you've got leg pain, if you've got trouble sleeping at night, you've got muscle problems, I'm going to for sure give you magnesium. And then zinc, I have my Immune Ultra, which is a really great lozenge that is just elderberry and zinc, and you just chew it. It's great. It's sweetened with allulose, which is great. So depending on what you need, a lot of that stuff we can get through food, and so depending on how depleted you are.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I assume, you know, other supplements like, you know, maybe even vitamin C, because I know you're big on collagen, would be something that would, hopefully you can get, you know, plenty through your food, but sometimes people don't get enough with their food that's something that they could add as well if needed.
Yeah, I put that in my shake every morning, actually.
Hey. So share with me a little bit more. I did hear the word paleo. Share with me a little bit more, you know, maybe with I'm really excited to read your book. I'm sorry that I did not get it sooner. But I'm a nerd and I'm just so excited to read it. That you had mentioned paleo, that you put most of your clients on a paleo diet. Is that kind of how the food frame book is, the detoxification process and the elimination? But, you know, if you were just to say the book as a whole, what kind of guidelines it follows? Is it more paleo?
So it highlights 6 major diet types. So recommend the detox for pretty much everybody, unless you're super, 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 super sick. But pretty much everybody does the detox for 2 weeks. And then you take the food frame quiz to find out which one you are. So if you're autoimmune, we cover the autoimmune. There's low lectin, there's paleo, as I mentioned, there's keto, and there's low FODMAP. So, and I go into great detail in the book on each one of those and who it's best for and who it's not good for. And then there's a bunch of recipes, but I go into great depth. There's great lists of what you can eat and what you should avoid. So it depends on what your health status is, and the food frame will tell you which one that is. But and vegetarian, I forgot vegetarian. So there's 6 diet types that I cover, and so it's really according to what is best for you. Now, some of them are elimination diets, like low FODMAP. FODMAP is an acronym, and it stands for fermented oligosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides, and polyols. And these are in English. Different types of carbohydrates that cause gas production, right? It ignites our methanoBacteria in our guts and makes methane gas typically. So those are people that if they have been IBS or IBD or their SIBO, small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, they're for sure going to go on low FODMAP. And that's 30 to 90 days. The stricter you are at the beginning, the better off you'll be. And then once you're off that, then I make my recommendations on where you can go after that. Keto is really more for people who have blood sugar issues. And they could be, obese or something, and they could do keto. Keto is a little tricky because to get into this state of ketosis is not easy for everybody. It's really much easier for men than it is for women. And it's hard to stay into ketosis. And if you have any kind of fat malabsorption, if your steatocrit is high, I'll find out on a stool test if you can't absorb your fats, or if you don't have a gallbladder, I wouldn't recommend it for you. Yeah, so you're 75 to 85% fat. And so it is a lot of fat. It's hard to sustain yourself on that. I mean, unless you just want to eat sausage and bacon and cheese all day. And then the challenge of keto is to get enough fiber into the system. Yeah. But people do very well with keto for the right person. Again, most women don't, but most men do. And so that I would do if you have blood sugar dysregulation. It really helps to get that blood sugar regulated. And then vegetarian is not my favorite pick for a wide net. I think it's very hard to get all the nutrients that you need without eating carbs all day. And there's different types of vegetarians. There's a vegetarian that eats, Cheerios and Doritos and Oreos and Coke and French fries. And then there's another type of vegetarian who actually eats vegetables and plant proteins. But I find, and I am a former vegan myself, that it was very difficult to get the protein without carbohydrates. And I kept seeing my blood work, my blood sugars go up and up and up. And I thought, how could this be? I'm not even eating sugar. But it was so much carbohydrates that there's just not a big way around it. So I do think that it's not for everyone, especially if you have MTHFR and if you have the allele for folate. It's very hard to get folate. I'm sorry, for B12. It's very hard to get B12 from plant sources. Yeast, nutritional yeast is really the only source, and there's only so much of that you can eat. Right. So you'd have to supplement, but it just wouldn't be the ideal diet type for everyone. Mm-hmm. And then low lectin is really all about decreasing inflammation and autoimmune. I think I covered them all, right? Paleo and yeah.
I have so many questions for you from that. Number one, well, the first one isn't really a question, but I interviewed Leah Keith. I don't know if you read her book, The Vegetarian Myth. She was a very interesting person to interview with her, her long stint of being, I think, vegan for the most part, but she called it The Vegetarian Myth. Such an interesting book. So for those of you that may be vegetarian, or vegan, and you're like, what? How is it hard to sustain? It's a really good interview to listen to. And I would love your opinion. And I'm going to assume it's probably very similar to your thoughts on keto. But man, have I been inundated lately with people questioning whether or not they should become carnivore, because there are quite a few doctors coming up and talking about, how good it is for us to go full carnivore, especially if you have an autoimmune disorder. And I would love your thoughts on that. And then I have one more question after that. So you can answer that first.
Yeah. So again, not one size fits all. So it would be according to what works for you. So a lot of protein could be very difficult on your kidney. So it's not something I would probably recommend for everyone or really anyone. I mean, I get the philosophy behind it is to sort of take out everything and just have protein, because the body can synthesize protein, metabolize it. If you have enough digestive enzymes, enough hydrochloric acid to break down that protein. So that's another consideration. But it wouldn't be one size fits all, and it's a lot of animal protein. So I think that we were put on this planet to eat plants and protein. And I think we should be eating a lot of plants, because animal protein doesn't have fiber. So how are you going to get that Uber through the system to collect all the toxins and all the waste and get it out of the system.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a big person of balance and moderation, and I am always trying to think, what is this machinery? What does it require? Right? Not what I'm in the mood for, not what I feel like, what's the new diet type that's popular, but what actually do I have the equipment to produce, right? To synthesize, to metabolize.
Yeah, I really love that. You had mentioned lectins as well, and you were Dr. Gundry had given you a rave review on your book, and I know his thoughts on certain types of vegetables and stuff. Do you hold that same thought process that there are some vegetables that are better for you than others, or do you just pretty much tell your clients just eat the vegetables?
So I do according to what your health status is. So if you don't have any autoimmune disease, we have these vegetables here for a reason. Enjoy them. Enjoy everything in moderation. Would I sustain myself on tomatoes full time? No. But do I have it in my diet? Yes, I do. So because I have autoimmunity, I don't eat a ton of nightshades, but I do on occasion eat some. So that's what I would recommend. If you don't have an autoimmune disease or you don't have any issues with inflammation, we don't need to really monitor those lectins. Now, should you be eating only lectin foods? No. Again, it's that moderation, right? So a little bit of everything is good. And I think an array of colors and diversity is really important for the gut.
Yeah, I agree. For the listeners, would you kind of go through real fast just a couple of the vegetables that if you do have an autoimmune disorder that may not be on the high end of the hierarchy of vegetables to eat versus ones that are
Sure.
should be a staple?
Sure. So nightshades are potatoes. So all potatoes except sweet potatoes and yams. All tomatoes, any kind of tomato, it's really the skin and the seeds. That's the high lectin sources. Eggplant. So eggplant really wouldn't make the list. What am I missing? Tomatoes, potatoes, eggplant, goji berries, and peppers. Peppers of any kind. So paprika, bell peppers, any pepper except for black pepper. But generally, they all are very high in lectin. So these are foods that I would avoid. As far as high lectin foods, you're going to find those in the seeds and the skin of squashes. So zucchini and yellow summer squash. You'll find them in cucumbers. And you'll find them very high in legumes and grains. So let me kind of explain what a lectin is for those, but we're
Yes.
all living organisms have the ability to cope with danger. So humans, we have the ability to kick, scream, yell, flee, call 911, right? Plants don't have that ability and they're living organisms. So what they do is they have this, what I'll call a hard candy shell around that seed or that germ. And that is their protective coating. So as humans or as living organisms, we all have two goals: to survive and procreate, right? And so they have that too. So they have this protective coating because if anybody wants to destroy them, they're going to have this coating so that they could survive and procreate. And so some foods have more thicker coating than others. So legumes are one. So we all know, either you are or you have somebody you know that cannot eat hummus or garbanzo beans, right? It's going to bloat them because they don't have the digestive enzymes in which to break those down, right? We don't have that acidic environment. Either that or they have SIBO. So those are very high in lectins. So squashes and beans, all legumes. So that includes peanuts, but all legumes. Cashews are pretty high in lectins as well. And then grains. So all grains pretty much have high lectins. So quinoa is a little bit less, millet is a little bit less, but those are typically pretty high.
And I highly recommend that people get your book and read this and to go through all of this when they're unwell, when they just message me, you tell me that, you just don't feel good. I had got that one text or message that I had messaged or said to you. And then just 30 minutes later, I was just like, a lady said, besides, getting more sleep, getting rid of my stress, not eating processed foods or too much sugar, she goes, what else can I do to have more energy? And I'm like, you just nailed it. There's really, you do those four things.
And get your blood work checked, because if you don't have energy, maybe it's your thyroid, your T3 might be low, and it could be your adrenal glands. It could be that you have insulin resistance, and the doctor is absolutely not going to check for that.
No.
We're lucky if they give you a hemoglobin A1C.
Yeah.
So, and I have people walk in my office. I mean, I have somebody I'm working with right now. I mean, it happens every day, that takes Synthroid for 25 years. The doctor tests their TSH and they go, "You're fine." Well, when we do all 9 markers of the thyroid lab and we see, oh my goodness, you're reversing, or you don't have enough, or you're not converting, or your estrogen is affecting your thyroid, or you have antibodies now, or you didn't used to, or whatever it is, they don't even look. So it's really important to get a full lab panel of all your thyroid and your blood sugars.
Yes, and I totally agree with that. And I'm trying to be the listener's advocate. Obviously, most insurance companies won't cover a lot of that, and it can get very expensive. Can you give, what is there something that's probably that you see is most important to check? If there's a huge laundry list of things and you're just like, I can't afford to do that. Is there 1 or 2 that you're like, okay, if there's only a few that you can afford to get right now and you're not feeling well, what would those be?
So if you don't, if you feel tired, not feeling well is a little bit general because I would want to see a little bit more, but if you feel tired, it could be blood sugar dysregulation. So I would test for a C peptide, a fasting insulin, hemoglobin A1C, and a glucose.
Mm-hmm.
And then the thyroid panel, if I had to choose, I mean, I would ask for a free T3 in addition to your TSH, but a free T3, that's the star of the show. That is your available active thyroid hormone. It's only 7% of the equation. So there's so many mechanisms that have to take place for you to get your active thyroid hormone. So imagine your thyroid's like building a fire, right? Your TSH is the kindling. The T4, the inactive thyroid hormone, is the wood. We have to cleave off 1 atom of iodine to get an active thyroid. So that conversion needs to take place. So that we have the kindling is the TSH, and the wood, we will not build a fire unless we have a match. So if you feel tired, that match is your free T3. That's what's available. That's for your body to use. So I would absolutely check for the free T3 and the TSH, and then see if there's reversing. If you're highly stressed, your cortisol will reverse your T3. Could be systemic inflammation as well, but and T3 uptake is when estrogen, your hormones, are competing for that cell site. So you should know why you're low, what's going on to make that low. And then there's cortisol testing to do, and but usually it's thyroid and blood sugar, and then people are pretty much on their way unless they're highly under tremendous stress. If you're having anxiety or panic attacks, it's coming probably from your adrenal glands or lack of B vitamins. If you're on medication, it's blocking these things. So, there's a lot to consider, but that's what I do in my office, is the full panel. And I pay for all my patients go direct to the lab. And so it's probably a third or a fourth of the price of what, I mean, even if I go through my insurance company, which I don't anymore because they end up charging me for my copay more than I can pay for the whole thing by myself. And, they mark them up so ridiculously. It's really sad that it's not achievable for most people to get their labs done. So that's how we do it here, so that you can see everything that's going on. We look at the breakdown of your white blood cells. We look at your kidney. We look at your liver. We look at your gallbladder, all those things. Inflammation markers.
Yeah. And is there any testing that you do for the dysbiosis for the leaky gut as well?
So I use a stool test for everybody I work with. Most insurance companies do cover that. I test for 84 pathogens. So I'm looking at all your good guys, all your bad guys. I'm looking for parasitic pathogens. I'm looking for H. pylori, which is a really big factor, and you do want to take care of that. That could lead to gastric cancers and peptic ulcers. I'm looking at worms and parasites, and I'm looking at candida, yeast, and fungus. And then I get all the other stuff that is opportunistic bacteria that can do a lot of damage, and autoimmune triggers we see. So I can kind of see, a little bit of a crystal ball where you could possibly be going. A lot of people with rheumatoid arthritis or colitis or Hashimoto's have these pathogens that cause that. So I'm always looking at the root cause, and then we can see if you have fat malabsorption, how much pancreatic enzyme production you're doing, the gluten, your inflammation. I mean, it goes on and on and on, but it's a plethora of information that tells us what's going on inside.
And that's so exciting. I mean, everybody deserves to know. I mean, we've got the technology. Everybody deserves to know what is going on in their body. And some of it will be relief because they're like, I thought it was this. And other times it's like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. And to be able to, intervene and to get someone, on the path of healing is freaking fantastic. So will you tell my audience, I know you're in California, where you are in California, maybe other places they can get your book as well, because like I said, it's quite the hot book on Amazon, and where they can find you on social media and maybe your website so they can learn more from you after this interview is over.
Yeah. So my website is Risa Groux Nutrition. It's RISAGROUX. And so I have the book on there. I have a class that I just recently released, an online class for thyroid health, achieving optimal thyroid health, because I do a lot of thyroid work. And then all my products are on there as well, my detox, everything. And then my social media is all Risa Groux Nutrition. I do a lot of informative videos. We get those out a lot. And then the book Food Frame is available on my website, on Amazon, on Barnes & Noble, and on Target.com. So it is accessible there. Yeah.
Yeah. And you guys obviously will hear my review of it, which will be fantastic. I just very excited. Feel like you're my soul sister when it comes to everything I've heard from you today. The only thing I didn't ask you about, which I probably should, and of course you can be 100% honest, is, I have been I always joke, an accidental intermittent faster for 20 years, now intentional intermittent faster for almost 10 years. What your thoughts are on fasting? For me, I'm not, even though right now I'm on an extended fast for a completely different reason, but I'm normally just a, 16-hour a day. I just don't eat all day long. I eat 3 meals a day. What your thoughts are on fasting? And is that anything that you cover in your book?
Yeah, I don't talk a ton about intermittent fasting, although I know it's a pretty big topic, and I actually intermittent fast myself. And it's really good for anybody who wants to stabilize blood sugars or needs to stabilize blood sugars. So it's really good for that. If you are low blood sugar, it is not for you. You're going to pass out. So it's not for you. So again, it's always according to what your particular health status is. And I find it to be a little easier than keto. And for women, I think it's easier to do rather than keto, and more effective, because most women have a hard time getting into ketosis. I'm one of them. So we need to take exogenous ketones to get into ketosis. So I'd rather just intermittent fast. So I do believe that it has a ton of really good things, not just for weight loss and blood sugar, but some long-term health benefits to it. And I mentioned that I do work with people all over the world, actually. So I do it by Zoom.
Okay.
And, yeah, so I am based in Newport Beach, California, but I do work with a ton of people all over.
I was hoping you would say that. I didn't know if I could use the term telemedicine or not, but that you do meet with clients over Zoom, and obviously they can get their blood work done in their area and get sent to you, and you guys go over it together.
Exactly.
Oh, I love that. Well, I have thoroughly enjoyed speaking with you. You are just a powerhouse of information, and you teach it and talk it in such a way. I love the sneaker analogy. I will always forever think of that, and I might steal it from you, but I will always give you credit. Thank you so much for being on and for finally being able to connect with me. I know my listeners are going to have, this is one I should have said in the beginning, knowing that you can't, unless you want to listen to it twice, you need to be sitting down with a pen and paper, because so much information was giving, as opposed to just listening to it as you drive. So if you're driving right now, I want you to listen to this again and get pen and paper and just write down all the notes that she told us. There were so many golden nuggets. Thank you again so much for being with us. And I hope that we can do this again in the future real soon.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So, okay, you guys, I hope that you wake up prepared and that you go to bed feeling proud. Have a great day. Bye-bye. Wow, we've reached the end. But before I leave you, I'd love to hear from you. After all, it's not every day that someone reaches out and asks for your opinion. And to me, your opinion does matter. So please share this episode with anyone that you think needs to hear this message. And remember to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. My name is Melissa McAllister. And until next time, thank you for being your own health advocate.